Hey everybody, welcome back to the Transfer Portal CFB podcast presented by No Context CFB. I'm here with Brian today. Brian, how's it going, my man?
It's doing well, man. We're deep into the off season now. Things are definitely coaching carousel's done. Transfer portal windows closed, so it's kind of just waiting it out. At least we have the Senior Bowl to keep us going, but talk doesn't stop. So here we are.
Yeah, so we'll get into the draft stuff eventually. Shout out to the Senior Bowl and Shrine Bowl and all that stuff. But right now, we're gonna do a little patting ourselves on the back, or not patting ourselves on the back. We're gonna look at our preview magazine that we released last summer. Great job by the team. We hit some stuff. It was great when I was looking over it again. Like a lot of great stuff by the team. We won't go like team by team because that would be crazy. Um, we also didn't hit on some stuff. Like we swung and missed real bad, but that's how it is. It's a lot of teams, a lot of players, a lot of stuff going on. At like I remember, I think we released it, and then a few days later, Pat Fitzgerald was fired from Northwestern, so it completely changed that preview. But for the better, honestly, for the program. But yeah, we'll just get right into it. First things first, our very own award, special award, the Colt Brennan Award. Um, an awesome award in honor of the great Hawaii quarterback who passed away at a young age. Um, our top five were Frank Harris, the quarterback for UTSA, Michael Pratt, the quarterback from Tulane, Austin Reed, the quarterback for WKU, Coastal Carolina's quarterback Grayson McCall, and WKU's wide receiver Malachi Corley. All those players had great years, some better than others, but the best overall. He was one of our other candidates, Aston Jeanty, the running back out of Boise State. Brian, what do you say about Jeanty winning the award, and about the other finalists and like anyone else on the list who you want to mention?
Yeah, well, first of all, with our watch list, I don't think we necessarily missed. I mean, I think all guys that we had predicted to be in up there were played up to their standards. I feel that we none of them really surprised us in the negative way. I think they all had good seasons. Uh, the one I look at, which I'll kind of get a little bit more later, is Frank Harris with the UTSA. I mean, he was hurt a lot all year, eventually missing a lot of the games. Uh, you know, uh, Early on, and he just did kind of his injuries, and a lot of injuries for UTSA kind of derailed that season. But I mean, otherwise, yeah, it wasn't it wasn't anything that we didn't that was egregious. But shout out to Jordan Kalani, man. He balled out. You know, I think Boise State, they've kind of not had the best couple of years before, and then they kind of needed a little bit of a push, a kind of carry, a kind of lift up, and we kind of got there. So yeah, I think that I don't he was on the contenders list. So again, I don't think there was anything surprising there, but definitely, we I don't think there was any misses in the Brennan Award watch list. I think we kind of what we think was going to happened, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree with you there. Just going down, let's do Pratt. Missed some time with injuries, and he was kind of held back during the season too. There were some like unsubstantiated rumors, but seemed kind of pretty substantiated on the field at least, where Tulane kind of was cruising by teams that they should have been blowing out because a lot of their players were injured and they were just kind of like load managing them until things really mattered at the end of the season, which I mean they hosted the AAC championship and they lost to SMU, but it seemed to work for them there. Austin Reed, Malachi Coley, they were up and down. There were injuries there and stuff too. And Grayson McCall also with a new offense after three years being in the really fun like triple optiony offense. New offense kind of switch over. There were some struggles there and injuries, but he eventually turned it around. Yeah, Ashton GT though, he was injured, but he put up ridiculous numbers, and it wasn't just stat padding. He was the offense for Boise State. It was really impressive to see. He helped them lead that crazy turnaround after they fired the head coach, brought in the interim. They won out. They ended up winning the Mountain West, which was, I mean, that was just the clincher. our finalists at the end of the year, it was also Jordan McLeod. I'm trying to do this stuff off the top of my head. This is really bad. There's so many names. The Liberty quarterback, and Ricky White, the UNLV wide receiver. We mentioned them there too in our other contenders list. So I agree with you. Like I think we hit it. Yes, we did. We put a lot of names on the thing. Yeah, but look, it's kind of hard sometimes to like nail the guy, and we nailed the guy. Like we had him in the list. So and a good example of not nailing the guy when moving to the Heisman. Um, we had listed in our. I won't list all the names that we had, but we did have we did nail Michael Penix Jr. As a finalist, Marvin Harrison Jr., Bo Nix. We did not have the winner though listed at all. We did not have Jaden Daniels. Uh, to toot my own horn, I had Jaden Daniels as my 12th overall in my top 25 preseason article, but again, I had him as 12th. I thought that he wouldn't, even though he had jumped as a passer, I didn't think he'd make big enough of a leap. It did help that he had awesome wide receivers, but we've seen players with awesome wide receivers before at LSU, who were not good quarterbacks. Um, so yeah, Jane Daniels, an impressive season by him. Brian, you're a Georgia fan, SEC fan. You see a lot of SEC ball. Jane, you saw Jaden Daniels. What do you make of Jaden Daniels winning the Heisman this season?
I mean, it was. I really don't think that you could give it to anybody else. I mean, you know, he got three or over 3,500, 3,812 yards passing, 40 touchdowns. You know, he led the league in QBR. Uh, it's just unbelievable. It's an unbelievable year. You kind of had to give it to him, and I don't think anybody else really, uh, you know, really could can compete with that. I know the the winning thing matters, and but that's never really mattered. I mean, we've seen guys win Heisman's before. Uh, Johnny Manziel and Lamar Jackson, uh, 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 RG3. You know, these guys who won the Heisman, and they didn't really compete for national championship. I mean, they won. I mean, they won games, but they didn't really compete for they weren't there at the end to compete for national championship. And so I don't think that should be a discredit to Jaden Daniels. I mean, 50 total touchdowns. Uh, you can almost separate his passing and rushing stats. Um, and on their own, it's a pretty good season. I mean, like I said, 3,800 passing yards, 40 touchdowns passing, 1,100 rushing yards, and 10 touchdowns on the ground. So you can separate those two on their own. They're unbelievable season. If a running back has that season, um, that's that's pretty good. And he did both, and he carried that LSU offense. I know they were probably, especially after what happened the season before, what happened in 2022 with them going to the SEC championship game and being, being ranked up to number 5 before losing A&M last game of the season. There was a lot of more expectations about maybe competing for a national championship, but you know, yeah, I don't think there was no way you could not give it to Jaden Daniels. I think he definitely, deserved the Heisman Trophy. If we're talking about an award that's given after, the postseason, Bo Nix and Michael Penix Jr., especially Michael Penix, his performance in the semifinal against Texas was unbelievable. But yet his performance in the national championship, not so much, right? But that's the whole beauty of the Heisman, that it's not a postseason award. It's uh, a regular season award. And yeah, Jaden Daniels was just unbelievable. I mean, in our top 5 was Caleb Williams, Drake May, Michael Penix, Jordan Travis, Marvin Harrison Jr. And all those guys had great seasons. Caleb Williams that season just derailed. That they lost games that they should have. I think their defense let them down too. I don't think that a lot of it has to do with Caleb Williams. I know he definitely wasn't uh, up to his 2022 Heisman campaign, but I mean, he still had a really good season. Obviously, we saw what Michael Penix Jr. did, um, leading Washington to the national championship game, and Bo Nix also just right there. What a way to rejuvenate his career, something we haven't really seen done before. you could have his career was almost dead in the water at Auburn, and he goes to Oregon and kind of rejuvenates and puts a new lease on life on his football career. And it took him to New York City for the Heisman ceremony. But yeah, I mean, I know that it wasn't the year they probably wanted, and I feel like Jaden Daniels would trade the Heisman for a chance at a national championship. But um, you know, it was still an unbelievable season. I mean, their losses was to top five FSU, a top 10 Mississippi State, and then a top five Alabama team. So you can't really be mad at that. Uh, and yeah, Jaden Daniels was unbelievable. So I have no quarrels with him winning the Heisman Trophy.
Yeah. Um, and like, I mean, some of our stuff, like Caleb Williams, still
Yeah.
awesome, like you said, just rough season, and everything. The one that really hurts is the Jordan Travis one. Like, I think we had
Mm,
that one down. We'll get to him in Florida State a little bit later. He would have been a Heisman finalist. He probably wouldn't have won, but I feel like he would have been a finalist. And if this was still a year where they went to five finalists, he finished fifth, right? Yeah, he would have been in comfortably. And I think he deserved it at least to be there. Not just for a story, he was playing real awesome football. Um, like the stats like weren't like the most eye popping. Um, but I mean, especially compared to Penix, Bo Nix, and Daniels, but he was still just using with the eye test, the good old eye test. He was still a really awesome player for them. Now moving on to our first and second team All-Americans. We're just gonna name like 2 to 3 names per list, like players who we think that absolutely hit, and then some that weren't really spot on. And I know it's gonna be a little bit nerdy. I think that we I'm just gonna say my 3 names just
sure.
are the special teams. Josh Riccardi, the Stanford kicker, like he didn't have a year that matched his previous year, but he was still awesome. 23 at 27, just a long range sniper. Tory Taylor, the punter for Iowa, just one of the best punters we've ever seen, which is saying something. And I know Iowa punts a lot, so yes, he gets a lot more chances, but he still did good with them. And also Jalen Lucas, the awesome kick returner for Indiana. Dude was explosive. He took back like 1 or 2 this season, and like he had a really good return average. Yeah, could you put other players there? Yeah, probably. But I think that having those guys on our first team, we nailed that. Where we didn't nail it, in my opinion, I get it. Blake Corum is awesome. Blake Corum puts up the stats, but a lot of his touchdowns are goal line runs. We didn't have Ollie Gordon even on our second team. We didn't have Cody Schrader, the Missouri running back. Um, there are other great running backs at the G5 level who we didn't vote for. Uh, I guess like we probably voted, some of us voted for them in like the forms and everything that we submitted, but they just didn't qualify. So that's where we missed there. And there's some other players on our first team list who like Harold Perkins Jr., like we all know he's deserving. It's just the way he was used at LSU. Um, didn't put him in the best situation. And some people might say, "Oh, then how can you have him as a first team All-American?" Just if you just put him at what he's great at, which is pass rushing, he would rack up a bajillion sacks. Just let him do that. Okay? You don't need him trying to learn to play linebacker. He can do that in the NFL. You're in college, you're trying to win. And that's why the LSU defensive coordinator got fired. Brian, what says you?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest miss, and I feel like nobody saw it coming, and is uh uh was Cody Schrader, up with Missouri. Obviously, I think his rise throughout the year was incredible, and um, you know, yeah, I mean, he's not even on our first or second list. Yeah, it was yeah, his season was just unbelievable and very deserving. Former walk on. I love to see those stories. Those are, the former walk on stories are always my favorite, just because you're kind of already behind the eight ball. You're kind of not starting on equal footing as some of your colleagues around the country, who are on scholarship. But um, yeah, it's incredible. Um, I feel like we had him on our second team, but I feel Will Reichard, also kind of nerdy too. Will Reichard from Alabama. I think Will Reichard from Alabama might go down as one of the greatest college football kickers of all time. I mean, he broke the record for most points of all time. Um, and he was just, I mean, he was just consistently just great his entire career in, this season as well. He was just great. He never missed. I mean, it just seemed like no matter what was going to happen, Will Reichardt is one of the most reliable kickers, um, you know, that out there. Uh, so yeah, it's just I feel that we had him on our second team, and I feel like he definitely deserved to be on the first team. And I don't even think he was on the I think even he was snubbed from first team. I feel like he should have been first team All American. I'm looking at the list right now. Uh, and I don't think he was. I don't think he was picked. Um, but yeah, yeah, it was another. I mean, we did hit uh, on Malachi Starks. I think he's continuing to show he's one of the best in the country. Uh, so yeah, there's a lot of guys out there. It's really hard to do for All American teams because there's so many guys that you don't see coming. There's a lot of guys that kind of don't expect uh, to to you don't really expect to show up, and they do. Um, so yeah, I mean, we had Joe Alt obviously was we had him on here. He was great. I mean, you don't really expect. I mean, you don't um, you couldn't really miss there. He's obviously one of the best in the country. Um, you know, so I think we did pretty well. Brock Bowers, obviously, we had him on theirs as well. So we hit on that. I don't think that was any doubt. He did miss a good chunk of the year. He almost missed half the season with injury, but he was still voted as a first team All American. So yeah, I think we did pretty well. I think Malik Neighbors, that's another name that we didn't have on our first team that I feel like he obviously with Jaden Daniels winning the Heisman, somebody had to catch those passes, and Malik Neighbors, probably benefited the most from that, and catapulting himself to first team All American. So, yeah, but other than that, I mean, we hit Marvin Harrison, Roma Dunze for our other first team wide receivers, and we hit on both of them. So, uh, uh, our athlete, our all-purpose player, Travis Hunter, we hit on that too. He won. He was first team AP All American at Colorado. So yeah, I mean, we did surprisingly really, really well. Just especially with how many players are on these lists, we did very well for ourselves, which is a little bit of a brag, but we did pretty good.
Yeah, and like you said, there's a lot of names, a lot of players, but again, yes, is it kind of a thing where if you spray the board enough, you're gonna hit on some, yes. But also I think it's pretty good that the names that we covered, like there wasn't that much of a disparity. And the players who did show up out of nowhere were again, they were kind of out of nowhere. If you look at other people, it's only like the people covering the team who are like, hey, this guy's gonna hit this small running back in Missouri. Like he was good last season, but yeah, he was really really good this season. Shout out to Missouri, an awesome season there. Um, College football playoff, New Year's six games. All right, I'm just gonna list them off here. So in the Cotton Bowl, we had UTSA versus Oregon State. Peach Bowl, we had Alabama versus Ohio State. Orange Bowl, we had Clemson and Michigan. Fiesta Bowl, we had Texas and Washington, which is awesome. Unfortunately, that was not a college football semifinal game. Um, First one, the Rose Bowl, we had Penn State and Florida State. Sugar Bowl, we had Georgia and USC. Then our championship game was Georgia and Penn State.
Hmm.
Um, I would just like to say, and I know like this is well after the fact. It's like, oh, you're just saying it because is that well after the fact. I was very surprised to see that, and I was high on Penn State, but I was surprised to see that we had Penn State in the national championship because it's like I could see them getting in because like if they can just all in my mind, all they had to do was beat Michigan or Ohio State, win tiebreakers, whatever, get into the Big Ten game. Whoever comes out of the Big Ten West, they're probably still beating them just on talent alone. And then they sneak into the college football playoff. I didn't have them at all like on my national championship radar. But yeah, I mean, Florida State, that's the one like I mentioned earlier with Jordan Travis. We had that one. That one was there. And then injury committee, whatever. But at the end of the day, we still had that one. Texas, Washington. We had the prediction right.
Yeah,
Um,
we're
and yeah, like
close.
yeah, and like UTSA, honestly, like they were fairly close. If they beat Tulane on the final day of the regular season, they probably beat SMU. I'd say even though SMU was like their defense was still really good, and they did beat Tulane with a backup quarterback. So I think UTSA would have had it, especially that the Alamo Dome, that home field advantage is crazy. Actually, I don't know if they would have hosted. I don't remember what the tiebreakers were, but whatever the case may be, um, UTSA was pretty close. None of us, we were pretty high on Liberty as a whole, I feel, but we thought that the strength of schedule wouldn't have allowed them to get in as the group of five representative. Oregon State, meh, I don't know. They were Oregon State, and then the other teams in there, just like Clemson, kind of a reliable one. And we had Michigan listed as a team, not in the playoff, but shout out to the Wolverines. Brian, what do you got? What do you have to add to our college football playoff and our New Year's Six predictions?
I mean, I feel like we were there. I feel like we had the right pool of teams that were expected to do well. Uh, obviously, Georgia, sorry, not Georgia, Alabama, Michigan, Texas, Washington. We don't have Oregon on there, which we should have. I feel, we didn't have Oregon uh, to be in a New York Six Bowl, but yeah, we definitely missed on that. But otherwise, yeah, uh, Alabama, Ohio State, Michigan, Texas, Washington, Florida State, and Georgia were all in the mix. Um, so we're relatively close. Yeah, UTSA again. I'll get to that in our. I'm going to talk about them a little bit in our disappointing segment. But yeah, I feel like they did have a chance there at the end, but they lost. They really did not have the season I expected them to. Injuries was a huge part of that, but also I feel like a common theme with UTSA is not being able to win, uh, to beat the better. Like a lot of time in college football is to kind of pull yourself up from the bootstraps and beat a team that might be better than you. I feel like a lot of the times you see, especially in the group of five, you know, teams and these kind of um, fringe playoff contenders or uh, teams who kind of kind of come out of nowhere. They kind of beat a team that's better than them, and I feel like UTSA has struggled to do that lately, or in this era that they've been in. They've been very good, but I'll get to them later. But other than that, I mean, yeah, Texas versus Washington, we had them in the wrong game. I feel like I remember correctly. I feel like in our predictions we didn't have Texas beating Alabama, so I think that's probably where the difference was. Um, you know, Georgia 3 points away from being in the playoff. Maybe woulda, shoulda, coulda been in the playoffs. Uh, even with that loss, in my opinion. But I have a Georgia helmet behind me, so my opinion doesn't matter, I guess, because it's biased. Uh, so yeah, we did pretty good. We did pretty good. I mean, Oregon State, they started the season really well. It looked like Oregon State was going to be in the mix there, and then they kind of derailed and lost some games, and you know, um, kind of fell off the wayside. But I mean, Oregon State started, or Oregon and Washington State. Shout out to them. They started the season very well, both ranked in the top 10, I believe, or after a couple of weeks, and then it kind of just derailed from there. So yeah, shout out to uh, I, I don't want to keep hyping us up, but just looking at the magazine and looking of our predictions, and I mean we've hit a lot more than we've missed, which is pretty. I was expecting to come in here and look at our list and be like, oh man, we completely weren't even close. Um, but I mean we've done pretty well. Penn State, I mean, like Penn State, their two losses was against Michigan and Ohio State, which I know, like, that doesn't really mean much because those are the two teams you have to beat to have a chance in the Big Ten. But with your only two losses, you lost to to the eventual national champion, then you lost to a one loss Ohio State team whose only other loss besides Missouri in the uh in the New York Six, which is another team we don't have on here, Missouri. Yeah, damn. Maybe we didn't hit as much as I thought we did, but. Yeah, I think we did pretty well, but we all had the right pool of teams. We thought we were going to be very good, and they ended up being very good. So I don't think we should beat ourselves up too bad over our predictions at all. But we were close, which is fine, I think.
Yeah. And I mean it's fairly easy to just like to hit the true like top 5, top 6 contenders in a year. Um but like the other like that's why with the expanded playoff like I'll just stretch it out to like the 7 through 12, 13, 14, 15. Those are the ones that kind of churn every year. It can be
Yeah,
just like a little thing here or there. Like you said, Missouri was a team who I feel like overall, again, overall, I think we were fairly positive on them. We just didn't see like this season coming out of them being a bounce here or two there from like potentially sneaking into the college football playoff. But again, that's why, at least in my opinion, like I know like it might not be like the overall best, and like it's your interpretation of what you want. Like if you want the best team to win the national championship, or if you just want entertainment, if you just want more teams in and just like whatever. The expanded playoffs will be better because again, like there's these teams, like you said, like Missouri, and then the other teams, like Ole Miss is always one we talk about. Like they're just right there. Penn State's just right there. But like
yeah,
when they play against the top teams, they kind of get their face smashed in. um, and like even that one year where Penn State beat Ohio State, it was like a lucky blocked kick, field goal return for a touchdown, and everything like that. And they still got destroyed by Michigan. There's things like that where like the expanded playoffs will be fun, and it will give us more chances in our predictions to nail more teams or to look more foolish when we miss. It's like how would you have more options to pick and you fail? But I think based on our track record, we'll do a lot better based on that. Now for this next little one, this last segment here, we're gonna talk about our worst team and best team predictions. Teams that we wrote on personally. We can't speak for everybody else in the transfer portal, but we can speak for ourselves. Again, so the worst team that we wrote about and previewed, as in like not again like overall looking at the previews, everyone's preview was pretty good, but there were some where it's like, man, you missed a little bit on predicting how this team's season would go, or this one's like, oh, you absolutely nailed it. Some like are a complete wash, like I mentioned earlier, the Northwestern one. Um, Pat Fitzgerald was
yeah,
fired like a week or two after it went out, so what you gonna do there? Other things like injuries, um, coaches being fired during the season, other stuff like that. Can't predict that. So I'll start out. My worst team, and I'll hand off to you, Brian. But my worst team prediction, in my opinion, was Nevada, the Wolfpack. Um, I had so thankfully we had there was a great idea of putting a ceiling, a floor, and a realistic record. So I had the floor at 3-9. Nevada finished at 2-10. But if you read through my Nevada preview, it was like very, very, very positive, saying like, "Hey, like it was really rough, but it still is one of the toughest jobs in the nation." And I thought that, hey, like Ken Wilson, he's like almost a Nevada lifer. He like left a little bit, but he came back. He's gonna turn it around, like slowly work things out. And, like year zero technically isn't a thing anymore. It's a phrase in college football. For those of you unaware, every podcast is someone's first podcast. Um, for those of you unaware, that year zero is that your program is so bad that you're not starting out at year one when you join it. It's year zero. Like just don't even think of the year when you're building the program. But with the transfer portal and everything, even at these lower levels, or teams, that you can bring in talent where it should be a year one. And so if we're not accounting a year zero, year two under Nevada and under Ken Wilson, there was not that much improvement. There were some players, yes, who I highlighted who were pretty good, but overall just not that much improvement. And Ken Wilson was fired. So Nevada, that one I just really missed because again, if you read the tone of my preview, at least I believe it came off as very positive that hey, Nevada is trending upwards. It might be a slow upward climb, but they're gonna get there. And they didn't. Which stinks. But again, like I think some people have a inflated view of Nevada based on the Colin Kaepernick years and the oh my gosh, the quarterback who came after him, who just won the Canadian Football League, the Grey Cup, their Super Bowl, which I can't remember off the top of my head, unfortunately. But yeah, those two quarterbacks came in and were really good. And then after that, Nevada kind of fell off. But If you look at Nevada's history, it's a really hard job, and I was just a bit too positive on them, and forgetting, even as I wrote it in the article, that this is a tough, tough job. Brian, what was your worst team prediction?
I'm kind of I kind of want to I want to tie it, but I don't.
You could tie
So
it. Go ahead.
my worst prediction. You know what? No, I wouldn't even say it's a tie, because um, I'll give UTSA the benefit of the doubt. They dealt with a lot of injuries. I really thought UTSA was going to be a lot better than they were. I really thought that they had a potential to go 12-0. I mean, or 11-1, with the only loss being to Tennessee. Uh, I mean, I really felt like they were the most experienced team in the American Conference. I feel like they had a really good shot of to be in the New York Six, which so I kind of predicted that a little bit. But I'm gonna go with Vanderbilt. Um, you know, Vanderbilt really disappointed me this season. And I don't know if I was biased because I wrote their like I said, like when we write the previews, we kind of buy into it a little bit because you kind of dig into you dig a little deeper. It's like watching Hard Knocks. I think I talked about this in a podcast before. It's like watching Hard Knocks. Whenever I was writing these previews, whenever you watch Hard Knocks, you just like, oh man, this team's winning the Super Bowl just because you're in there and you see the work that they're putting in and you see how everybody, having the motivational speeches or anyway. But I digress. But Vanderbilt, after the way their 2022 season ended with wins against Kentucky and Florida, you felt like, man, they've really built something. They're really at least a foundation, for Vandy standards, that they have something to build on. They could definitely, try to go into try to use that as motivation and get into bowl eligible. My realistic prediction, my ceiling was 7-5, and my realistic was 6-6. So I really felt that this was a team that could compete and make a bowl game, and they did not. Yeah, they did not. They weren't even close. I mean, I don't think. Yeah, it was really bad. It was another typical um, Vanderbilt season, um, which is really disappointing. And I really felt Clark Lee had, the the ability to build on that, and they finished 2-10, um, which is which is it's just 0-8 in conference. Like, it was just really sad. Um, very disappointed in Vanderbilt. I really thought they had the foundation to build on, which was the main piece of the preview, was that they've continued to build and get better and get that next step, and they just completely crumbled. So um, yeah, I think Vanderbilt was my biggest miss. I really thought they were gonna be, it's not the sexiest pick, but I really thought they were gonna be bowl eligible this year, and yeah, it was ugly. It was very, very ugly. So I don't know where they go from here, but yeah, that was my biggest miss.
Yeah, I agree with you. Like, they took a step back, but I one of the things, and it's for all like levels of football. I think the biggest thing is if you can have a really good, or at least like above average quarterback, you can do really well. And then like a program like this, Nevada or Vanderbilt, if you have like an astounding quarterback, you can do great things. Um, their quarterbacks took a step back at Vanderbilt, and I think with
Yeah.
Diego Pavia coming in, they'll at least be feisty. Like in 2022, they were five. Vanderbilt was 5-7. Um, and they were welcoming in Tennessee, who coming off a crushing loss to South Carolina. They had Hendon Hooker was injured. It's like, hey, maybe they could spring the upset. They didn't, of course. They got mushed. But yeah, I agree with you. We're like, that's probably your worst one. But I'll give you the benefit of doubt because the quarterbacks did take a step back, which affects everything. And just one thing with Vanderbilt, just I don't know. I've been looking at maybe like other programs have been doing it. They've been really hitting the international um side, looking for recruits and stuff, and like finding like that's a huge untapped resource that a lot of programs don't do, like the top ones, because they don't really need to. Like, you can get the top dudes from out of your backyard or from California, whatever. But for a place like Vanderbilt or Nevada, maybe looking overseas and getting top prospects from there, and just like slowly building up a program. That's something they can do. Um, Move on to the positive one. Brian, let's get positive. We'll end on a positive note here. Go ahead. What was your best hit for a team preview?
I think I'm going to go with LSU. Uh,
Yeah.
I did have their ceiling to be 12-0. Um, but my realistic prediction for them was 10-2. And my prediction in my, you know, um my realistic, little explanation, I wrote they are good enough to defeat some good teams, but lose a couple of close games, including against a revenge-hungry Alabama.
Hmm.
uh, which is essentially what happened. I mean, that was they lost a close game to Alabama, and then their other two losses was against, like I mentioned earlier, was against Ole Miss, and Florida State. So they lost close games to really good teams, which is what I said was what there was gonna what was gonna kind of derail their season. So um, their ceiling was 12-0. Which, like I said, it wasn't the team was as I think the team was as good as I thought they were going to be. I think it was more of the opponents that they were going to play. Like, I didn't know if Alabama was going to be as good as they were. I thought they were going to take a step back, which kind of added to, which I felt that might have, like, if Ole Miss wasn't as good as they were this year, if obviously Florida State and Alabama, like all three of those teams were we really didn't know how good they were going to be this year. They both had the potential of being really, really good, or, not as good as they were. So, yeah, with those three being the only three losses that they had, um, and obviously Jane Daniels winning the Heisman Trophy, I think they were as good as I thought they were going to be. Um, and yeah, shout out to LSU. They could have easily fallen back a little bit further. With some of the losses that they had. Yeah, Harold Perkins didn't have the year that many anticipated he would, but Jalen Daniels had a bigger year than a lot of us anticipated he would. So yeah, with Jaden Daniels winning the Heisman and them going 9-3 with their only three losses against top 10 teams, I can't be mad at that. So I'm pretty happy with what they ended up doing, and they were exactly who I thought they were. Uh, so I'm pretty happy with that prediction.
Yeah, that was one. I was just like looking through at people's stuff. That one was like, oh man, Brian nailed this one. Mine, um, I had super high expectations for them, but I was also very measured, and I feel like I hit on them best when I talked about them overall. Tulane, the Green Wave. I really thought that, hey, this could be the team. They could be Cincinnati Part Two, where again, as a Group of Five team, it's not just having one good season. You have to have back-to-back good seasons and undefeated seasons, basically, or close to it, to make it. And like their loss to Ole Miss, unfortunately, Michael Pratt was out for the game, and like they lost by 17, but it was a lot closer than that. They had Ole Miss until like the very end when like the backup quarterback just like had a few plays here or there. And then they hosted, and again, like I said, they kind of coasted through the regular season. Um, then they hosted SMU, and the opening of the game was perfect. SMU got the opening kickoff, first play, they fumbled it, re recovered at the SMU 1 yard line. Tulane scores a touchdown. Next possession for SMU, they drive down 10 plays, but then they miss a field goal. And then like, oh man, Tulane's gonna be rocking and rolling. And then the wheels kind of fell off. SMU's defense rose up to help their backup quarterback Kevin Jennings did just enough to get them over the line. But yeah, overall, like I had like my realistic for Tulane was 10-2. Like they take Ole Miss to the wire but fall just short, and then they had like a close loss in conference, but they still host the AAC title game. They did all that,
Yeah.
and like again, like I talked about how their depth would be huge, and it was like they had injuries all over the place and players just like hurting and still playing through it, or they could lean on their depth for that. They had a lot of returning players, especially on the offensive line, that held up pretty well. Head coaching, Willie Fritz, great again. Good on him to be able to take the Houston job. But yeah, Tulane, that's one where disappointing for where I thought they could be. And like realistically, I thought they could be undefeated. And if anything, they'd go back to back years in the New Year's Six Bowl. But
They
yeah,
were
and
close.
yeah, and I do like I did write a little bit where I've written about them in the past, also in some articles for the website where I thought, hey, this could be a team that could be on the rise. They're the top of the AAC. You can just like you got Willie Fritz there. They can um just dominate the league and just always be like the group of five representative for the playoffs. Willie Fritz left. Um, a lot of their players like graduated, moved on to other places. So that's probably not going to hit. But at least for this past season, I think I hit there. And again, just like you've been saying, just again looking through the magazine, just other people's stuff, we did really good overall. And like some of us, we wrote about our favorite teams. Um, biased, sure, of course, it's gonna affect us. And even like if we're writing on a team that we had no idea about, like you said, Brian, we buy into it because we're reading all the stuff. But I think we did a overall we did a great job of just being measured about it, being again, and it's helpful that we had a ceiling, realistic floor section for the records. It just helped us like really balance it out. And overall, I think we did really, really good. Like if we were playing baseball, we're batting um like even though like 300. No, let's do a free throw percentage because that sounds better. If you're overall a free throw percentage, we're shooting like we're in the 90s. We're good, solid. Are
Yeah,
we gonna make everything? No. Or let's do 85. Let's be more humble. 85%. We're gonna make everything? No. But if we're fouled and going to the free throw line, you're confident in us. And just really proud of the team what we did this year. It was really, really impressive and fun to look back and read the stuff. And kind of laugh at ourselves where we missed.
yeah, yeah. It was it's interesting. It's really different when you have guys who with with no agendas, no just they just know ball, man. I mean, that's what it is. It's just a bunch of guys and girls too, but shout out our gals too. They that 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 know ball, and they they studied, and they checked their biases at the door. I wrote about my favorite teams. You wrote about your favorite teams, all relatively. So Uh, but we stuck to football, and we listened, and we paid attention, and that's kind of the beauty of the transfer portal. And yeah, so as officially that season kind of comes has come to a close, coaching carousel's over, the transfer portal, at least the winter transfer portal's closed. As we're starting to gear up for the springtime, you know uh the football season is officially coming to an end, universally. I mean, we have one more game, the Super Bowl in the NFL side. But yeah, so as we close on that chapter, we kind of get ready for 2024. There was a lot of good that we did. So we just gotta, you know,